Working from home means every day is bring your kid to work day. And if you don't have the right tools and mindset to balance work and family responsibilities, you may end up throwing in the towel. Black Moth Radio gives you the upper hand in starting and managing your ideal lifestyle while creating your own business, doing what you do best, and doing it from home. So, grab the nearest ink pen and prepare to take notes, because this show is packed with discoveries, tips, and experiences to help you through your journey. Let's begin with our host, Robin Bull.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Black Moth Radio. My name is Robin Bull, and I am your host, and we are the podcast where we make working from home work for you. Since I work as a professional writer and I have one novel published, I thought that I would put together a little post to walk everyone through my version of the writing process. I've actually designed this particular writing process for teenagers because in the last week or so I've been asked to help by two different teenagers. Well, to be fair, one of the teenagers didn't ask me, her father asked me. So I thought that I would go ahead and put this together, and moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, cousins, sensitive types, if you're listening to this, don't worry. It's a post that's profanity free and G-rated for your protection. So, first thing we are going to do, review the writing process. And I know you learned it in school, so we're not going to get into extreme detail, because what school usually teaches as far as writing is concerned is how to research and write a report or an essay. Those skills are very, very helpful in adult life. However, make sure that you learn different ways to create a bibliography and different ways to cite your work, because it's going to be even more helpful when you become an adult, because you may learn APA now, you may enforce it in college, because you're using it all the time. But when you get into the workplace, they may have their own way. They may want footnotes instead. They may want MLA. They may want Chicago. They may want AP. It can be crazy. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the basic steps of the writing process in regards to how to write a novel or short story. I will likely continue to use the term novel, but you're welcome and encouraged to substitute that word for your preferred writing. So, we're going to look at 4 stages: pre-writing, rough draft, final, and editing. However, we're going to look at those in the context of writing a novel or short story, like I said. Before we get started, though, I want to say this: don't get bogged down with your word count. Yes, to some degree it matters when you're trying to figure out what sort of writing you have on your hands. Certain types of novels have a general word count. For instance, sci-fi is sometimes generally twice as long as a regular novel. You may find that a sci-fi novel is around 120,000 words. Some are 80,000 words. You may find a traditional novel is between 50,000 and 75,000 words. So, don't worry about word count right now, especially if this is your first time writing something, because you're going to end up stressing out or hating the process, and we don't want that. I want writing to become a lifelong pleasure for you. Okay? Okay. So, we're going to start with pre-writing your novel. You can use Word, Google Docs, a notebook, construction paper, whatever it is that you have that makes you enjoy the writing process. What we're looking to do is get all of your ideas out. I'm not necessarily saying you need to outline every detail of your book, every character, or even every scene. But if you love outlining, knock yourself out. Outline it, as much of it as you want. There's no actual wrong or right way to do the pre-writing process for a novel. The goal here is to get all of those exciting, memorable, soul-grabbing, heartbreaking things that you want in your novel onto paper. You don't even have to put them in the correct order. You just need to get everything out of your brain and on to the document. Why? Because otherwise you're likely to forget something when you first think about it. So take the time that is necessary to write out information about your key characters, names, descriptions. You can put in notes, whatever you want. Your pre-writing doesn't have to be arranged or done in any special way. Take whatever amount of time is necessary to do this, but don't stress out if you have plot holes that you think you have to fill, or if you have a shortage of ideas or anything else. That's not the purpose of this. I also don't want you to go back and edit, and you'll hear me say that a lot. Do not go back and edit until it is time to edit. The only changing that you should do at this stage, or even in the writing stage, is if you need to go back and add another idea because you're really excited about it, you want to change something in a scene, you want it to have a different outcome, or maybe you want to rewrite the entire scene, by all means go back and do it. It does not matter if you end up with 1 page or 100 pages of notes. Once you have your basic notes ready to go, I want you to go back and do a little bit of organizing. First, make sure all of your information about your characters is placed into one part of your document. If you have notes about scenes, try to put those into the right order. And make sure that you consult your notes during the writing process. You don't have to use them at all if you decide you want to do something totally different with your work. So now comes the good stuff. It's the rough draft stage. It's time to write all of the things. You don't have to necessarily start at the beginning. I had the hardest time with writing an introduction to anything when I was a teenager, so my 11th grade literature teacher told me to leave some space at the top of my essays, about 5 lines worth, because this is back in the dark ages when we used pen and paper. And I'd start my paper with the meat of the essay, what I needed to talk about. I'd write all the way through the conclusion, and then I'd go back, review what I'd written, and write an introduction in the space that I'd left. Start where you're comfortable with your rough draft. Again, as you're writing, don't go back and edit. Don't try to edit as you write. The only time you want to go back is to add more detail, or if you decide that you want a scene to go a totally different way other than what you've already written. An important question you should ask yourself before you start your novel is whether or not you want to write in first or third person. You're the only one who can answer that, but I want to give you a little bit of information that might help you. With first person writing, you have to remember that you're going to be extremely limited in what you're able to write, because you can only write from your own perspective. For instance, if your character says, "I went to the store," you only have the power to tell the reader what that character is thinking and doing. You're limited in your perception. You're limited in what you can explain to your reader. With third person, you can talk about the look one character gave to another and how the recipient interpreted the look and what was actually going on in the head of the character who gave the look. Can you or should you switch between first and third person? Well, it's your book, so you can do whatever you want. I would advise you to pick one and stick with it. It's really hard to successfully switch between the two without confusing your readers, and you certainly do not want to confuse your readers. When you're writing a novel, the general rule is to show, don't tell. Yet at the same time, you don't want to make it seem like you think your readers are stupid, so it's okay to leave a little bit to the imagination. Whether you choose to include micro details is another one of those things that's totally up to you. Consider your favorite stories and novels. Which things did the author tell you in extreme detail? Which things were left to your imagination? Remember though, just write. No editing as you go. See, I told you I'd keep telling you that. Okay, so what about pictures? No, you cannot just go to Google Images and take things that don't belong to you. Think about how upset you'd be if someone stole your novel and passed it off as their own work. It happens. I promise you it happens. I've talked to probably 6 authors in the last 2 weeks who believed that people took their ideas and made movies out of them. And we're not necessarily talking about current blockbuster movies, but they're really upset that people took their idea and rewrote it and ran with it without even getting their permission or paying them to use their ideas. So if you go and take images that don't belong to you, you're taking ideas that aren't yours. You're doing that to someone else. So your options for getting images if you want to use them include buying them. You pay to use them from sites that are designed for that purpose. You need to look for images for commercial use. I know you don't necessarily think you're a business, but when you're writing and you're selling books, that's still considered commercial use. You could DIY it. If you love photography or drawing, you can always do it yourself. Personally, I don't have that sort of talent. You can look for Creative Commons images. When an image is considered CC or Creative Commons, it is in the public domain. While this can be a very good thing, you still need to give credit where credit is due. Generally, a CC image that you find online will come with something known as an attribute or an attribution. You need to include that with the description of the image or in the caption. You can also use images from sites that provide royalty-free images for commercial use. Those sites really are out there. As of February 2018, 2 of those sites include Pixabay, Pixabay, and Pexels, Pexels. Those are just 2 examples. If you get onto Amazon and look at my book, Self-Publishing School, you'll actually see the cover first, obviously. And the image on the cover is something from Pixabay that we just changed up. Oh, something else. Don't worry during the rough draft stage about your table of contents or even numbering your pages. Word can do that for you in just a few clicks. Doing it now is just going to create more work for yourself during the editing process, because you may find that you have to adjust your word count. You may find that you have to adjust the way that your lines lay on the page. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you're going to have to deal with, so don't worry about that right now. Don't try to be perfect in your rough draft. All rough drafts are rough. That's why it's called a rough draft. Just write, okay? Okay, so how long should your writing be? And how long should it take? Well, how long it will take will ultimately depend on your devotion and how much time you have to work on your book. As far as how long your rough draft should be, you don't even have to push it. Just get the story out as best you can, and then you can go from there. For National Novel Writing Month, the non-junior version, there's nothing wrong with the junior version though. The novel length is supposed to be 50,000 words, although you can set your own word count, I guess now. I know you can with the junior version. And the goal is to meet your word count in 30 days. So if you're writing 50,000 words, the way an author gets that done in 30 days, they do the math, 50,000 divided by 30, and it works out to 1,668 words a day. It's actually like 1,667.67 words a day. We're rounding up. So how do you meet such a big goal? By making sure you're putting in enough details, or you can keep adding scenes. But remember, again, your novel doesn't have to be 50,000 words. It's fine to write a short story. It's fine to choose a different goal for your word count. You do not have to write 50,000 words. I just wanted to explain the math so that you can see how to get it done faster. So the third stage is the editing stage, and this is the stage practically all new writers hate unless they love grammar. There are several different types of editing. There's good old-fashioned proofreading, where you go through your work, look for typos, misspellings. That's the easy stuff to see. There's line editing. With line editing, you read each sentence, not just for typos, you're also looking for problems with things like sentence structure. Ask yourself, does this sentence tell the reader exactly what I want them to know? This is all about making sure that your writing is clear. There's developmental editing. With developmental editing, you're looking at the story to determine if there are plot holes or other issues. Some of the things I most commonly run into when I'm editing, and I work as a copy, line, and developmental editor on a regular basis, use a font that's normal. Don't use a crazy font that prints in all caps, bold, cursive, or anything else. Use a font that is easy for your readers to read. Use the right size font. When I write, I tend to use Bookman Old Style size 12. I happen to like the way that particular font looks. You do not need 2 spaces between every sentence. Of course, Youngsters that are listening to this may not have been taught to type with 2 spaces between. Moms, dads, aunts, uncles, grandmas, cousins. Those of us who are older, those of us who are in high school in the 90s and before, most of us were taught to use that 2 spaces. It took me forever to unlearn that. Most people still do that. You don't have to do it anymore. I would give you the history lesson behind it, but that's really not the purpose of this. If you don't know how to properly use a semicolon, don't use it. Save widow and orphan control, which has to do with the way that the end of a page runs in to the beginning of another page. Save doing that for the end of your editing process. You don't even have to do it at all. It's something that most professional editors will look at, though. Put in your table of content and page numbers, but do those things very last, the very tail end. And then a very important tip. I know editing is a painful process. It's hard to hack and slash at your baby or let anybody else do it. Editing doesn't mean that there's something terribly wrong with your work. The purpose of editing is to make sure you're presenting the very best finished product that you can. It's to help you be extremely proud of your work. Everyone goes through the editing process. And then you have the final stage. Before you go through publishing of any kind, it doesn't matter if it's traditional, small, or indie publishing, or even self-publishing, read over your work one more time. You can even ask 1 or 2 trusted friends or family members to read it. I'd recommend that you choose someone like an English teacher or someone else that you trust to give you honest feedback. And if you plan to publish, cover art, but that's a whole nother ballpark, but it is definitely something that you need to make sure that you handle before you publish your book. So, that is the writing process for novels in a nutshell. I know it's really easy, right? Sounds really easy. Get in there, sit down, and get your ideas lined out. Start writing. You're going to have a great time. Make sure that you're following confessionsfromthecouch.com. Join the 1,630 subscribers there. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter, both at /TheRobinBull. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, I'm pretty easy to find on social media. Thanks for listening and have a fantastic day.
Hopefully, you're walking away from this podcast with a plan to implement the tips you've heard, a great attitude, and you subscribe to Black Moth Radio to ensure that you never miss any of the goods. Whether you're a hopeful work-from-home freelancer or you're well settled into your work-from-home lifestyle, we hope you've learned something that you can use. If you're ready to know more about the work-from-home lifestyle, check out sellfy.com/TheRobinBull. Questions, comments? Let Robin know by going to facebook.com/TheRobinBull or confessionsfromthecouch.com. Thanks for listening. Join us next time and keep learning.